Hello and welcome all back to Election Time News, your one-stop for political summations, poll reviews, reviews on other channels, and more. Today is Tuesday, October 1st, 2024, and later today is going to be the vice presidential debate, And today the goal is going to be to show off how things stand before the debate, so that afterwards I can predict how things will change, and then we can see how they actually do change afterwards, if much. I do have a feeling that this actually will be one of the more influential vice presidential debates in history, so we'll just have to wait and see. Now, looking at our map here, of course, we have a 2024 electoral map. Now we're going to fill in all the safe states, which for the Harris-Walz campaign are Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, New Mexico, Hawaii, Minnesota, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, D.C., Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Virginia. Then for Trump and Vance, there's Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Utah, Idaho, Alaska, all of Nebraska minus the 2nd congressional district, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana. Now, the likely states are, of course, going to be Ohio, Iowa, Texas, and Florida for Trump. And then for Harris and Walz, it's going to be, since Maine's 1st congressional district is safe, it's going to be New Hampshire and Maine's statewide contests, as well as Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. So Harris and Walz have a narrow lead of 226 to 218. Now, what we have left are, now this could be said to be likely. So it is now 226 to 219, and these are the 7 swing states we've been talking about all cycle. Now, looking at the Republican and Democrat best case scenario, if something were to swing heavily after this debate, it could probably end up being one of those 2 scenarios. But I do not see any chance of the debate going that strongly, even if it is one of the more influential debates. So, but anyway, we're not even talking about the debate currently. We're just talking about how things are currently standing. So going by poll time, starting at Georgia, we have a 2-point national lead for Kamala Harris, which is not enough by most people saying to have a victory. Now, of course, moving into the overall polls, we can see that Georgia, Trump has a 1.4-point lead on Real Clear Polling, and a 1-point lead according to 538. If we look at the average here, 0.7 points. And according to DDHQ and The Hill, sorry, it's up here. According to DDHQ and The Hill, Trump has a 0.2 of a point lead. So, however, Trump is leading in all of them. So this is a good sign for the Trump campaign, especially with the fact that he is leading by a good bit on Polymarket. It is currently 59-41 for Trump. He just dropped below 60%, which means that Harris is very, very slowly gaining in her chances of winning the state of Georgia. Only time will tell if she will be able to potentially get really close to 50% by Election Day. Now, Georgia, I believe, is the one state that Polymarket got wrong, like many predictors did in the 2020 election, as it just barely went blue by only a few thousand votes. Probably, I think it was like 7,000 or 8,000 votes. So it was very, very close, but I do think that it will be going red so far this election cycle, just barely. Probably under a point or so, because it's been getting closer and closer as time is moving on, especially if Walz performs as well as it appears that he will against J.D. Vance in the debate. Now, moving on to North Carolina. North Carolina is historically the most right-leaning of these swing states. RCP has Trump leading up by 0.6% in 538, which is generally the most centrist. DDHQ and The Hill are very, very slightly left-leaning, and RCP is very, very slightly right-leaning, as they leave out some polls intentionally to try to be more accurate, but they end up being a bit skewed as such. 538 includes basically every single one out there. Now, according to 538, Trump is up by a single tenth of a point in North Carolina. A very, very narrow lead. It has been back and forth, very, very close. No one has had more than a full point lead since very early mid August. August 13th was the last time that anyone had a lead of over a point. And so it appears that 2 days ago, actually, it flipped from a Harris lead to a Trump lead by a tenth of a point. Looking at RCP, of course, we have a 6/10 of a point lead, which is the largest here. And then we have a half of a point lead on DDHQ and the Hill. This combined with the relatively slight, just over toss-up, 56% chance of Trump winning North Carolina. This has been very, very slowly declining, and there's a chance that it will actually go blue for the first time since 2008, and before that, it was in the 70s when it went blue for Jimmy Carter. So, it's been a very long red state, but there's a chance that it might tilt blue again. So, however, as of right now, I don't see it actually going blue, so it's going to be tilt red on our map. Now, moving into Pennsylvania. This is the biggest state for the election this year. This has a 30-some% chance of being the tipping point state for the election. And the polls are looking favorable for Harris, as currently she is actually, according to Real Clear Polling, she is down by 0.2 of a point, as this Trafalgar Group poll had Trump up by 3. However, I believe that according to most pollsters, 0.8 of a point lead, according to 538, and we have a 0.6 of a point lead, according to DDHQ and the Hill. So altogether, that's about a half of a point lead for Harris. That's, again, still well within the margin of error, but that's still somewhat noticeable. Now, of course, on Polymarket, it is obscenely close, 51-49. But keeping on par with what's been going on here, I think that it will hold on blue because of its strong Democratic history, and I think that the suburbs are continuing to swing very hard to the left, continually, as we've seen in 2020. And if that momentum continues and the Harris campaign can manage to hold on to the urban cores enough, then there will absolutely be a leftward shift in the state of Pennsylvania. Be able to hold on to it for a second election cycle after the surprise break to the right in 2016. Now, moving on to Michigan. Michigan is the most left-leaning out of the swing states this cycle. And looking at the DDHQ and the Hill average, Harris is up by 0.6 of a point, which is identical to the lead in Pennsylvania. And on 538, she has a 1.8 point lead, almost a full 2-point lead. That's almost outside of the margin of error. And looking here, she has a 1.4 point lead on Real Clear Polling, with a new New York Times Siena poll with her up 1. This interesting Atlas Intel poll up 4. Now, there's been multiple videos about this. This is a very confusing poll set. This poll set had Trump winning the 3 Rust Belt states, but then had Harris winning in Georgia and North Carolina. Very peculiar poll. I may do a video on that later if anyone's interested, but I have a bit of a full schedule right now that I have planned. Anyway, moving back to the map, this is almost a secure Harris state. I think it will actually go probably somewhere just over 2 points. Here, it is Harris's strongest non-likely state, actually, as all of these other states are likely or safe. 65% chance of her winning to Trump's 35. That is just under 2/3 of a chance. So that's a relatively secure shot for Harris here. Now looking into Wisconsin, this is the last state that Harris would need to win in order to hit 270. If Trump can win it, then Harris needs to win Arizona, which is definitely more difficult depending on polling this season, this cycle. So Wisconsin currently, Harris has an 0.8 of a point lead, according to Real Clear Polling. Looking into Wisconsin from 538, Harris is ahead by 1.9 points. And look, 1.8 points. And looking at it from DDHQ and the Hill, we can see here that she's ahead by 1.7 points. So 0.8, 1.8, and 1.7. So generally around 1.5 points. The second highest chance of her winning with 56%. That is just barely above toss-up. That's actually, interestingly, identical to Trump's chances of winning in North Carolina, according to Polymarket. So this is correct, with most people seeing how unlikely they think it is that Harris will win North Carolina. That means that it's actually as unlikely that Harris will win Trump will win Wisconsin, which means that it's a bit more secure than they think. Now, moving back to the map, I do see with the history, it is definitely going to be shifting to the right. But again, I actually think it will increase its margin from 2020, even though just barely. I go to this very in-depth in my collab video with Politics Canada. Make sure to go check that out. But I think it will actually increase its margin to just over a point, somewhere between a point and a point and a half. It will actually shift a bit to the left of Pennsylvania, as it is a bit more. It has more urbanized areas, which are shifting to the right a bit more, and Milwaukee and Madison in Wisconsin just aren't moving as far to the right as the urban areas in Pennsylvania, especially as Black and Hispanic support is moving towards the Trump column. With this, Harris secures the election, meaning that she has won the presidency, but we still have Arizona and Nevada left. Looking into Arizona, we have Trump with a 1.1% lead. He has been holding on since the beginning of the month with a nice lead. He has broken away, and Harris did catch up with an outsider poll right here, but Trump did then pull back ahead, and he is now again leading by 1.1%. Looking at DDHQ in the Hill, we have 0.8 of a point lead. Again, this is the most left-leaning out of them. And looking at Real Clear polling, Trump is ahead by 2, the most right-leaning. So 1.1%, 0.8 of a point, and 2 points. That's right around 1.3%, which is a bit further to the right than I think it will go, but it will probably be going to the right unless there is a general left shift, which I think might happen after this debate, depending on how strongly Waltz does, and depending on how Biden and Harris end up responding to the hurricane damage after the flooding has receded. Then the government can get in and can support, depending on that response, that may sway a few voters in this vital region over here where it's very, very highly Republican, where if they are able to pick up a few voters, it could definitely be the difference between a red and a blue North Carolina when it comes out to November. Now, the last state, Nevada. Nevada has voted blue for quite some time, and it hasn't been as strong as Michigan, for example, but it is the only one out of the 7 swing states that went blue in 2016. So for that reason, as well as polling, I'm going to put it blue. It appears that it will slightly go blue, as Polymarket has it as a 53% Harris lead. 47%, that's very, very close, but not quite as close as Pennsylvania. But looking down at Nevada here in the polls, Nevada is the only state out of these 7 where the polls actually underestimate Democrats. And the fact that Harris has a 2.2% lead, according to DDHQ in the Hill. And looking at 538, she currently leads by 1.4%, and she's by 1.3%, according to Real Clear polling. That paints a clear picture that she has probably almost about a 2-point lead. So this almost could even potentially move up to lean, but not as of right now. And as I see it, this is again the map that we have with where Harris ends up winning 276 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 262. A 14-point victory for the vice president over the former President Trump. And of course, things are probably going to change with the debate later today, but this is things as I see it right now. Now, make sure to leave your ideas and advice in the comments. Make sure to join the Discord. Very new for hitting 100 subscribers. That's in a recent community post. I'll be putting that in my profile very soon. And make sure to subscribe. Hit that bright red button so we can hit 250 by Election Day, which I will be live streaming. So make sure to check that out. And subscribe so you don't miss that. Now, thank you all so much and have an amazing rest of your day.